welcome. It's nurse attorney Lorie Brown from empowerednurses.org and yournurseattorney.com. And welcome to another episode of Hey Nurses, What's Next? How 21 nurses became business owners and successful entrepreneurs. And I'm really super excited today because I have Mindy Cohen with me. And Mindy is the founder and president of OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting, a nationwide litigation support service providing legal nurse consulting and medical expert witnesses since 1995. Mindy has more than 25 years of staff nurse, nurse educator, and administrative nursing experience in the hospital, home care, and rehabilitation settings. Mindy received her bachelor's and master's degree in nursing with honors from the University of Pennsylvania and is the past president of the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants. And Mindy is also a legal nurse consultant certified. So welcome, Mindy. I'm so happy you're here.
Thank you, Lorie. It's my pleasure, and I'm happy to be here talking with you.
Well, I so appreciate it because, as you know, I mentor legal nurse consultants, and the number one question I get, is it really possible? And here you are. You're doing amazing. Go ahead.
No, I always say when I get a lot of people that call me and I say it's absolutely possible. You just have to have some stick-to-itiveness in addition to some other things.
Yeah, great. Well, we'll get into all of that, but if you could describe your business for everybody and let them know what you're up to.
Sure. So I have probably what I would call a general legal nurse consulting business. We do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I'd say we have 4 programs, so to speak. We do defense medical exams, general legal nurse consulting, expert witness work, and then long-term care work, which is kind of a combination of expert witness and consulting. So that's our overview. We try to put everything in one of those 4 buckets so to manage the concept. We're nationwide, and we grew that way over 25 years, so it certainly didn't happen overnight. And I would say that we're probably 95+% plaintiff work.
Well, and I knew you back when too.
Right.
Yeah, and it is so possible, and it's one case at a time. That's all it is. It's just one case at a time, and you grow and you grow. And the beautiful thing I say about legal nurse consulting is once you get an attorney client and they like what you do, they'll continue using you.
We have clients that give us a lot of work, and we have clients we might only hear from a few times a year, every couple years. And it's not because they're going to someone else. It's because for whatever reason, they don't want to spend the money. The case may not require our services. So I think you're absolutely right. If you can hook in a few clients and build from there, it does grow, but you have to have some patience for that.
Yeah. And I also say legal nurse consulting is the easiest business to start because you don't need a brick and mortar and
100%. That's a great point. Yes, you need a very little investment of a computer. You don't even need a fax machine now. When I started, you needed a fax machine.
Right.
A phone, a computer, and a little bit of business skills, which can be developed over time as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And you just rebranded to OnPoint Legal Nurse Consulting, right?
I did. It's been about 2 years, and I was Mindy Cohen and Associates for 20 some years. And I was doing a new website, and the person doing my website asked me, had I ever considered changing the name of my business? And I said, no, why? She said, well, it's a little passé to use your own name, and the business isn't only about you, and a better business name from a marketing perspective is something that talks about what you do. So it was a very hard decision because I felt like for so long people knew my company as Mindy Cohen and Associates, and I was really worried well, what if I change it? Will they not know who OnPoint is? But I decided to do it because she convinced me, like it was now or never, because I wasn't going to rebrand again with a new website. And I was speaking to a client, and the client's secretary said, "We love you guys at OnPoint. You're always on point." And I'm like, there you go. So it was a combination of factors that happened all around the same time that ultimately made me decide to do it. And I haven't lost one client. And honestly, I don't know that I've gained any either.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm glad I did it, but I can't really say that it has helped or hurt me, the name of my company.
Well, I thought you had told me you did it so you can sell it because you wouldn't have to sell your name.
That was not at all why I did it.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great reason.
These people, I mean, my husband told me that he believed I shouldn't, that Mindy Cohen and Associates, it would be better to have a name that didn't include me if I were planning to sell it. But the truth of the matter is that when I was thinking about this, the business was me, and I actually felt like it would be worth more as Mindy Cohen and Associates because we had such a solid reputation for so long.
Yeah.
So, yes, I guess I forgot about that because that wasn't important to me, but that was important to him. That he thought that, you know, it would be great since I've built this nice business that I should be able to sell it. And he really thought that was important. I honestly don't know if I believe that or not.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important to build a business with the intention to sell because you work so hard and you should be able to get, you have built up so much goodwill.
I think you're 100% right. And I really hadn't, when this all came up with my website, I really hadn't been thinking about the future. You know, I didn't really have an exit strategy. I guess in the back of my mind, I believed that I had grown something that was sellable, but my mind just wasn't there. And honestly, my experiences, I agree with you. Yes, we should be always, and I'm learning that now over the last few years, you should have, if not an exit strategy, your mind should be set to be able to sell your business and have some value for it. But I don't know that I really believe that the name of the business is integral to the ability to be able to sell it.
Okay.
That's where I came down on that.
I see. Yeah, because you have definitely built a lot of goodwill and a lot of, and somebody can take it over and it's worth it. You know, it's your legacy.
I hope so. I think so. And I've worked hard over the last few years to make some more conscious decisions about what things needed to be put in place going forward so that when I am ready, it might be more sellable than not.
Yeah. So we were talking about legal nurse consulting, and it really is very easy to start because you don't even need a program. I mean, when you did it, were there programs available?
No. So interestingly, yes, there was. Vicki Milazzo did a one-day program back at the time, 25 years ago now, almost 26. And when I was home, not working, I had just had my first baby, and I got this brochure for legal nurse consulting and thought, and it felt really expensive. It was $500 and I wasn't working. And in 5 phone calls, I thought I better call some attorneys that I know and see if they've ever heard of it. And nobody had, but in 5 phone calls, I got 2 jobs, which would kind of be unheard of today.
Yeah.
But I did my first expert case without any training at all. And the attorney was thrilled and pleased. So I think if you know, they're hiring us because we are clinical experts.
Right.
And I think our nurses should keep that in mind, that you want to have a level of clinical expertise that you bring to the table. So you're right, you don't really have to have a program.
But there are resources available. You don't have to go to an expensive program. In fact, the American Association of Legal Nurse Consultants, where you were the past president, they have a fantastic book out about principles and practices of legal nurse consulting.
Whenever anybody asks me, I always say that's the first thing they should invest in. It's a couple $100. It's not a big investment. And then there are programs like yours that really help somebody be practical and think about what they're reading in the book, what they're learning from the couple cases that as they're breaking in, and who can take their hand and guide them along the process. And I think sometimes that was not available in a formalized way when I started. And I think that would have been very helpful for somebody to give you some of the ins and outs, and when you're frustrated, calm you down, and all that stuff.
Yeah, same here. There was nothing available when I started. And I always say I was an overnight success. It took me 5 years to figure
Right.
it out. But at least nowadays there are people who are available to support us and help us and take your hand and mentor you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so so you weren't working when you started legal nurse consulting?
I was not working when I took the course, but because I was on maternity leave. So I'm trying to think. I was working 2 days a week as a pediatric home care nurse. And I'll have to go back and juggle my brain. I did that probably for 3 to 5 years. And it never ceased to amaze me that the week that I took an extra day was the week that I got a case in. So I was juggling this new baby a couple days a week, and I really was able to grow slowly and organically because I had a couple clinical days. I had some dollars coming in. I had a husband that worked full time and had a good job, so I didn't have the pressure that some of the nurses have today, where they want to be able to get up to a full-time nurse's salary quickly, and it doesn't happen that quickly. So yeah, I worked for almost 5 years. I started, as I said, 2 days a week, and then I maybe a couple days every other week, or drifted down to maybe a day or two a month. And then I always worked in the summer as a camp nurse for a few years when my kids were older. So that was my path.
And then you also said your company's nationwide. And that's also the beautiful thing about legal nurse consulting is nowadays files are sent electronically. It's changed everything.
It has changed everything. I mean, back in the day, attorneys would, spend a lot of money mailing boxes of records. Or those that I live right outside of Philadelphia, in an area that many attorneys live, and they would come by my house at night or 6:30 in the morning on their way to the office and drop off their boxes. So with email now and file share services, it is fantastic. You really, you can be anywhere. And what's great, as I see it evolve, is now with the advent of video depositions, it's even taken it one step further, because an attorney doesn't have to be afraid to hire an expert that's far away, because they really may only need to spend the money to bring them in for trial. And since most cases settle, the risk is small. So all of this technology has really enabled us to come leap years ahead.
Yeah. And one of the questions I get asked all the time is about competition. And, the way I look at it is that they don't teach attorneys what legal nurse consultants are in law school. And there's so many that still don't know who we are or how we can help.
I totally agree with you on that. I think competition is good.
Me too.
And I think that we can be friendly competitors. I do exhibiting with some of my competitors. Many of my competitors do work for me. So the relationship is one that is kind of unique and lovely. So I agree. I think there's plenty of work out there to go around, and a little competition is good.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, it's out there for sure. I mean, the competition today is staggering compared to when I first started. I mean, I think, any nurse today, it would be very unlikely to get 2 jobs in 5 phone calls. But that's 25 years, and we've evolved and what have you. But I think there's definitely work out there, and we should not be afraid of competition.
There's a lot of work out there, and there's a lot of untapped areas, where there aren't legal nurse consultants. I think it's maybe a little bit more prevalent on the coasts, but on the inlands, like, I'm in Indiana, and there is not much competition there at all.
Interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, I think we have to be creative. And I think one of the issues is that we as nurses really don't have business training.
Right.
So we don't know how to think about just what you're saying. All right, what kind of research can I do to find out where the market is best, and how do I go after that business? Some other business that's selling widgets would do just that. They would do a national study as to where widgets are needed and where to market their business. But we have to learn those skills. In addition to honing our medical legal skills, we also have to learn the business and the marketing side.
Right. And again, you're not just limited to your location. You can market anywhere in the country, even in Canada.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So one thing that you said was interesting about, I always say in my business schools, I'm going to replace your nursing brain with a business owner brain, because as nurses, we rely on the hospital for our paycheck and our benefits. And as a business owner, we get to create all that ourselves. But the benefit is, once you're on the other side and create this freedom, Mindy, you just got back from Portugal for 2 weeks.
I did. It's been a long time coming, as I was mentioning to you, but I can really go away now and take a vacation, and I have people that can cover for me, and I don't have to be attached to my phone, to my email. I can really shut down. And I'm not to scare anybody, but it took me 20 some years to get to that place. But I've learned some lessons over the years that I would do differently now. I wouldn't wait 20 years to hire additional people and teach somebody how to check my email and what have you. But they were some lessons learned the hard way, as we always do in business.
Right, because we were the forerunners. We didn't have any mentors, but now that there's mentors out there, I always say I shorten the learning curve exponentially with people. And so
I'm sure you do.
Yeah, thank you. So you made lots of mistakes, and so have I, believe me. So yes. What is the biggest mistake you made, and how did you overcome it?
Let's see. The biggest mistake is probably the first time I had to testify. I had made a couple charts and exhibits, and there was a date error. And the defense attorney knew the record, and he wanted me to show him in the record where I got this information. So I went to the record on that particular day, and it wasn't there. And I was sitting on the stand, and I was dying. And in my anxiety, I couldn't find it. It was the next day, but I just looked terrible. And the attorney lost the case. Oh. And I thought for sure it was all because I screwed this up. I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days. And I had nobody to cry to because I didn't know that many, I was only a year in. And I finally got up the nerve to call him and apologize and tell him, I was going to refund all his money and, whatever. And he said, Mindy, this was, I'm not happy you did it, but you did not lose the case. We lost the case on liability, not on damages. But even still, so I think I have become, I don't want to say compulsive, but I now really check beyond. And I do that on my own dime. I'm very careful not to charge the attorneys for what I think is what I call my OCD time. Like I could prove something once or maybe twice, and I feel like that is a fair thing to charge the attorney for. But in my mind, I always feel like, all right, am I sure these dates, like everything has to match up. When you're going into court or you're preparing a behind the scenes document that the attorney is really relying on, you really get to understand what's critical. And so I got myself out of bed. I did not bill him. He would not take the money back that he had already paid me up to that point, which was very sweet. And he had continued to send me work until he retired. So it was in the end experience was good. I had another case recently. That was something that I did myself. Because we work with contractors, I thought, I think maybe I'll share this experience with you. We had a nurse expert send her affidavit of merit to the defense attorney instead of the plaintiff attorney.
Ooh.
Yes. There was, she claimed that she did not see our letter, our open case letter that we send to everybody with the name of the attorney and the case, and somehow she just got confused. And I had to eat a lot of crow for that. So again, I think the lesson is be careful. We made it right. We replaced the expert, and the attorney was generous to us when he could have been. But so I find that if you learn to own your mistakes and apologize and rectify them, those are good, not only good human skills, but they're good business skills too.
Definitely. That's great advice. Are you looking for more nurse experts?
Always.
Okay.
So I'm open. Yeah, because you want it. We never just send a nurse expert. We never, we always match our experts to the case and make sure our nurses or doctors or whoever it is have the right experience for that case. So every ER nurse may not be right if they haven't worked with someone having an impending MI, but they work in fast track doing stitches and wounds and orthopedics. I'm not going to use that expert, even though she may be quote unquote qualified as an ER nurse. So we're always looking for experts, even experts that have not testified before or are new, because some of them are great and some attorneys, have their preferences and they don't want to work with anyone who has never testified or this or that. But we're open to working with new experts who haven't testified.
So if anybody is watching this who's interested in being a nurse expert, don't worry if you don't have any experience. Mindy or the attorney will help you. And
absolutely.
And so how can they send you their resume?
The best way would be Mindy at onpointlnc.com.
Great.
And I always like to have some explanation of not only your clinical experience, but any legal experience you have at all. Because then that helps me when I put you in my database. I'll have that little cover letter in your email to say, oh, this person would be great on this case, or what have you.
Yeah, great. Okay. So if you, what advice would you have for a nurse who wants to start their own business, whether it be legal nurse consulting or any type of business?
Let's see. I think there are a few things that were important to me that I think are solid things. I think you need to have an attorney and an accountant. Get your books and your paperwork set up right from the get-go, so you know how to file certain things, what things are deductible, what you have to track, what you don't have to track. Obviously, you need a healthy computer with IT support. If you're like me, I just want the thing to work. I don't want to, so I pay for somebody to monitor my computer, to monitor the updates and what have you. And in this day and age, I think we need that privacy and protection. So that's something I didn't have when I first started. I had to go back and recreate a system that was more HIPAA compliant and had cloud, backup, offsite backup was something very new. But I think those are some critical issues. And then I think the nurses should think about what is their area of expertise and try to stay in that lane, at least initially, because the attorney is hiring us for our expertise. And one of the things I learned when I first started is I did everything. I did every case, and I was losing money terribly because I had to do all of this research on conditions and issues that I really didn't know anything about. And I couldn't bill the attorney for all those hours because they were coming to me thinking I was putting myself out there as the person who can handle this, that, and the other case. So I think you have to be very careful not to overstep your boundaries. And I think you need to bill fairly and not shortchange yourself, but recognize that you can't overbill because you don't know how to do something. So that's an investment that I made in myself and in my business by recognizing, oh, okay, so I'm looking at a kidney cancer case, which I know absolutely zero about. So if I really want to take this case and learn from it, I have to eat some of the costs to educate myself about that.
Right.
So I think being careful about what you know and how you put yourself out there, because what is that saying? You can only make a good first impression the first time, or something like that.
Oh,
so
that's great.
if your bill is for 27 hours, and I see this because I work with new people, and they send me a bill for 30 hours, and I'm like, oh my God, you had 500 pages to read. That's impossible that you spent 30 hours, or not impossible. And I believe that they spent every minute that they're billing me for, but that's just not reasonable to bill that to the attorney. So I think you have to think about what's fair to you and what's fair to your client, and what's an investment. When you're investing in yourself, you shouldn't bill for that time.
I did everything as well, all different kinds of cases, and learned so much. And I always say to people, look, if you want to take a case that's outside your area, you know how to find the answer.
Exactly.
But like you said, know that, you can't bill for all your learning curve.
Exactly. And that you're just honest with the attorney, so that, because I found, this is another interesting angle on this, I found that a lot of attorneys don't know what they need, especially when it comes to expert witness, not so much behind the scenes. but they don't know if they need this expert or that, or they think a nurse is a nurse is a nurse.
Exactly.
And, you know, I am always fascinated. We do a lot of nursing home work, and I'm always fascinated that nursing home nurses are willing to take hospital cases, and hospital nurses are willing to do cases in a nursing home because they think
as an expert.
as an expert. And I don't mean to, it's fine if they're comfortable with it and their attorney is comfortable with it. But I'm very conservative about making sure I match the expert with the potential defendant. And I don't want ever somebody to come back to me and say, well, this nurse, the defense attorney asked her when was the last time she worked in a nursing home and took care of an elderly patient, and she basically said never. So I'm very careful about helping the attorneys talk through what it is they're looking for. Are there any state requirements of experts that we need to know about? So, you know, somebody has to be working only no less than 50% of their time, or they can't make more than 10% of their income doing legal work. So if we don't ask those questions, we might help them find an expert, but it might not be the right expert for them.
Right. And what drives me crazy is when the attorney is like, well, we'll just use a doctor. And I'm like, the doctors don't know nursing standard of care.
I just realized, I think it was one of the southern states, not that far south, Tennessee maybe, somebody was just telling me, an attorney, that they are allowed, not only allowed, but they must have an MD affidavit of merit on a case, even if it's a nursing case. So there are some jurisdictions that are still, we got him a nurse anyway, because I convinced them that regardless of what the state allowed, he should, you know, he needs to have he needs a nurse.
Right.
But there are some jurisdictions out there that are still allowing physicians to testify on nursing standard of care. It's crazy.
Yeah. So I just want to clarify a piece that you mentioned. There's two types of legal nurse consultants. There's the expert, who is the one that goes to court and testifies. And then there's also the behind the scenes consulting. So
absolutely,
if you don't want to go to court and still want to be an expert or a legal nurse consultant, you can do that. You just do the behind the scenes.
Yes, 100%. Yes, sorry for confusing that, but yes.
And that's why you have different divisions of your
That's
practice.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right. We, you know, back in the day, I was doing both. When I started, I was an expert witness and I did behind the scenes work. And for many, and I suppose other people feel this way too, I had my first baby, and then I got pregnant, I had a couple miscarriages, and then a second baby, all in fairly short order. And I thought, you know, now's the time. I don't have to work as hard. So I sort of went down this path of doing behind the scenes consulting. And it grew into a very nice business for me. But I always used to say, if I were smarter, or if I had it to do over again, I would stay clinical for a piece of it and then do expert witness work, because it's a better bang for your dollar. You make more money, and and attorneys are always going to need good experts. If a case is looking like an attorney spending too much money, even though if he needs your help behind the scenes, he might not invest in it because he doesn't want to put any more expense on that case. But he's never going to say, I'm not going to move forward with an expert, because he can't deal with his case without an expert. So I used to say that all the time. And I think I've changed my perspective a little bit to say, I at least think for nurses who are starting in the business, being an expert is a great way to start, because you don't have to convince the attorneys that you have something to offer. They know they need you. And once you do a nice job on a couple cases as an expert, they will start to promote you, because their friend will say, hey, I need a med-surg expert, or I need a labor and delivery nurse. And it's a great, and you learn so much by doing the expert thing, and you learn so much about the process of going through discovery, deposition, and trial, that you then can bring that to your behind the scenes work. And those attorneys that know and love you as an expert, it would be a lot easier to convince them to say, hey, do you have any other cases that I can help you on? Do you need any medical record reviews? So I think that is a really nice segue to getting that behind the scenes work.
Yeah, I agree. And that's so funny. I say the same thing. If I were reborn, I would be a physician and do expert work, because when I referred one of my expert physicians to go to Hawaii, I was extremely jealous that she gets an all expense paid trip to Hawaii.
Exactly. So I think that is a good piece of advice for some of the newer nurses, or the nurses that want to review records. I think we have an old, what's the word for it? Not an old wives' tale, but we used to say, oh, everybody wants to sit at home in their pajamas and read medical records. And that's the idea of what legal nurse consulting is. And people want to get away from the hospital, and they want to work when they want to work. But that's incredibly more challenging to develop that. The work is out there, but I think it's just a nice path to, you could work 3 hours as an expert compared to 6 as a behind the scenes nurse.
Because you charge a lot more as an expert. So
that's right. The expert fees are higher, and unless you're testifying, the stress is the same. I mean, I take it just as serious if I'm working behind the scenes as if I was doing an expert review. Right. The attorney has to know what you're seeing in there. But yes, so the behind the scenes work is out there. I think it's harder to cultivate. And the other thing I like to tell newer people is make sure you're active in AALNC, in either your local or your online chapters, virtual chapters, because you don't have to convince another legal nurse consultant that you're valuable. They already get it. Yes. And so they can be a good source of getting you started with cases and building your experience as you're trying to get your own clients.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you've done amazing, and I'm so grateful that you shared with us all your secrets to success, and the skin knees too, because that's part of it. And I so appreciate it. Again, if anybody is interested in being an expert legal nurse consultant and testifying, please send your resume to Mindy, and when the right case comes up, you might get a phone call. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll put the information in the notes to the site as well. And I just want to thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, Lorie. My pleasure. Have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.